Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our third episode of unPACK Community Conversations. We are here at the Community Education Center with a great panel tonight, and our topic for unpacking will be centered around advocacy. So we thank you for joining us. This production of unPACK is facilitated by Life After Trauma Organization, PC Coalition, and the Mill Creek Community Partnership. So we thank you for joining us and have a wonderful evening unpacking with us. Thank you.
Welcome. Our first panelist is Rachel Honore. Rachel is an advocate, a mother, and literacy community engagement expert who lives and works in West Philadelphia. Her work specifically focus on autism, accessibility, and promoting quality of life resources. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
Next is Mr. Ralph Whitfield. Mr. Ralph Whitfield is a community activist who has had an extensive career in advocacy, social justice, equal rights, education, and Black empowerment. He continues to teach, guide, and mentor and fight for rights of those overlooked and left out, oppressed. Welcome, Mr. Ralph.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Jerry Puryear. Jerry is an artist, educator, and on-the-ground community-based, faith-based leader. His passion is working with children and specifically Black young adult males as mentor and a big brother. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you so much.
Terressa Price. Terressa Price is a development consultant and writer, was a teacher previously, teaching in K to 12th grade, alternative education, and higher education administrator. Primarily writes about social justice and interracial in the Black and brown community and anti-racism. Welcome, Terressa.
Thank you.
So, our first question is, what does advocacy means to you? And what is the difference between advocacy and activism? I'm going to start with Rachel.
What advocacy means to me is when you aim to influence social, economical, and political institutions for change where there may be disconnects and such. And sorry, could you repeat that second question?
And what is the difference between advocacy and activism?
Advocacy deals with a little bit more in terms of going harder at policies and going harder at the institutions that bring them out, whereas not advocacy, but the
Activism.
other one, activism, just is directly and on the spot, whether it be through protests, whether it be means of social media and other different outlets to give your message or spread your message across your resolve as to whatever it is in terms of what your cause is.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Jerry the same question.
Thank you so much. What does advocacy mean to me? Advocacy, I would say it means to stand in the gap for someone, to be on someone's behalf and speak a good word for them, be able to reach someone else that could help that person that you are going to them for. Just bridging. And also the difference between advocacy and activism. I would say that activism incorporates a little bit of advocacy in there. Activism is more of direct power to affect change for those who don't have someone to work on their behalf. I would say activism is a much stronger version of it.
Thank you, sir. Terressa.
In terms of what advocacy or activism means to me, it is essential to my life as a Black woman. It's what is needed to change policies that um, affect my quality of life and for both myself, my family, and my community. And the difference between advocacy and activism, for me, advocacy is more personal. It deals with the intersections of my identity. So I would advocate for myself. And I use my writing and my teaching as my form of advocacy and activism as well. And for activism, I would agree with everyone else in terms of it being um, more on a larger scale, like a campaign is better organized. So examples of it for me have been like marches or protests, but also petitions and letter writing campaigns and things of that nature. So
Thank you so
thank you.
much. Mr. Ralph.
Advocacy means the difference between life and death. Voices must be heard. And if voices are not heard, people cease to exist or cease to live and they simply exist. So without advocacy, and these voices are not heard, these people are simply existing. And the difference between advocacy and activism, I thought about this the other day, and I thought about the title of a movie that I think we're all familiar with. It's called uh, Set It Off. That's activism without the criminal elements, and advocacy is the support uh, given by not just myself and a lot of great people here, but we had a lot of great people such as Bishop Tutu, Nelson Mandela. Those were great advocates in addition to being activists.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna go right back to you, Mr. Ralph.
Sure.
Have you ever been an advocate in your work or personal life, and who was you advocating for?
Yes, I have. And particularly in the area of when I was living in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I advocated for on a number of different platforms for a number of different people, but I put a great deal of emphasis on the youth. And the reason why I put it on the youth is because I recognized that people were not, um, they would hear them talk, but they would not listen to
Mm.
them. Oftentimes, what you have is the youth is, I should call them aliens to adults. And what they would do is they would uh, listen to the voice of the guy or the girl that walked next to them. And they did that because they that person next to them wore the clothes they did, ate the food they did, listened to the music they did. But their parents, who actually were the heroes, who they didn't know anything about, they were aliens and they were just simply doing or saying what they were supposed to say to them. So I advocated for the youth, where great emphasis is on them particularly, but I also did it for a little bit of everybody. And is the second part of that question you want me to answer?
You answered it. You answered it. You said you advocated for the youth, and we most
Absolutely.
definitely appreciate that. So I'm gonna ask Teressa the same question. How have you been an advocate in your work or personal life, and who did you advocate for?
Yes. Well, I've been an advocate for parents because I've actually been a teacher longer than I've actually been a parent. So, part of my teacher training was that our parents should be our partners as educators. And so, whenever I was working with my fellow as a teacher coach or did any type of teaching, I always advocated for the parent, for them to be informed and for them to be a valued partner in the educational system. But in addition, I also advocate for youth in terms of juvenile justice. I'm a real
advocate and activist for restorative justice. So I pushed for those initiatives whenever I worked in any of the schools or alternative programs. And personally, just with regard to women's health, I had to be my own advocate. Um, Unfortunately, seeing how Black women are treated in the healthcare system, particularly when I became a mother. And so I had to learn how to advocate for myself. You know, traditionally in our community, we honor doctors and their words are law, but we know our bodies. And so I had to learn how to advocate for myself when I knew something was wrong with my son, when I knew something was wrong with my body. And so those are the ways that I kind of advocated for myself and both personally and professionally
Thank you so
and for
much.
others.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask Rachel the same question. How have you been an advocate in your work or personal life? And who did you advocate for?
Oh boy, let me take a deep breath for that one because I could go a million and one ways with that. But what I would like to say is I see myself as the unlikely advocate.
Mm-hmm.
After having my son and receiving the extremely overwhelming diagnosis of autism,
Mm.
there were certain services. This was a whole new world that I had entered into that I was not prepared for. The advocacy piece became an evolution for me as a mother. And in doing so, there were services that my son needed. And in finding out the services, it grew deeper and deeper and deeper. So having searching for services where I knew some of my maybe my white friends or counterparts could get easily, I could not. So the fact that there was a whole mixed bag of information, services that my son needed, it dovetailed into um, having layers of racism and all of the above. I quickly found people that were not only like-mindedness or people that research-wise that were able to help my son and I. So I call myself the unlikely advocate because it literally turned into a world where I wasn't even seeking. And from that, it gave me sort of an impetus and such a fire in my belly
Mm.
to want to see other disconnects and other changes that needed to be done. And that's how I got to the space.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you so much. I'm gonna ask Jerry the same question. How have you been an advocate in your work or personal life, and who did you advocate for?
So at the moment, I'm a substitute teacher, and being a substitute teacher, I get exposed to different grades as well as exposed to different classes. And I guess for the most part, I try to advocate for those who feels the type of ways that I feel. You know, first before being able to be an advocate, you have to be able to relate to being disenfranchised or just being left out and forgotten. So I feel as though I can connect with encouraging myself and advocating for myself internally. And I try to do that with the kids. I try to always incorporate positive information and encouraging words so that they can know that, you know, they have the power and to affect change and that they can do it if they want to, if they really want to. Whatever they want to do, they can achieve. So I try to just make that be a part of my nature. For the most part, it's something that I believe in. So I try to just be an advocate whenever I see unbalances and whenever I see that information is not passing back and forth clearly. Yeah. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So I'm gonna ask Dr. Clara to chime in and also tell us something about yourself, Doctor.
Psychologist in private practice in Philadelphia. wasn't born in Philadelphia, but I was raised here. So I'm very familiar with just about every part of the city. Lived in most parts of the city. Um, the organization that I formed, LATO, the Life After Trauma organization, is in its own way was inspired by a desire to do advocacy or be an advocate for the most, what we call the most traumatized groups of people in our society. And so it is a privilege for me today to be sitting with this group of panelists and to hear your testimonies. And I applaud you for the work that you and the commitment that you've made to this work. And so, in thinking about as I was listening to you, you talk about make these very powerful testimonies about your work. I had a question that I would like to pose to the panel in general. How do you think advocacy work reduces trauma or can reduce trauma or traumatic stress? Anyone?
I'll set it off. Um, I believe because the acknowledgement of the self um, um, gives us the opportunity to work with so many people. So, I think of myself as an advocate and, what it does to me or how it affected my life. And I'm certain that it is virtually impossible to give without receiving. And I think when people know that they have support, they are empowered by that knowledge and they are less fearful and they become aware of their rights. Because I know that the only rights that people have, especially the people who look like me and some of the people in this room, are the rights that they know about. So without them having an advocate, somebody knowledgeable, just a step ahead of them, not better than them, maybe different in terms of knowledge acquired that can assist them, I think that it lessens the trauma, uh, I think even before and after, for that matter. Was it the second part of the question, Doctor? Um, you want me to
Well,
answer?
you answered the question. It's either trauma or traumatic stress,
Okay.
and you did.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Wonderful. Anyone else on the panel?
Yes. So there's a saying that goes, no man is an island, no man is alone. Each man is my brother. I forget the rest. It's so long ago since I've heard that. But that statement proves true to the question that you asked. To be able to know mentally and emotionally that you're not alone, to know that other people are in the fight, to know that together as a team, as a unit, there are things that you can do to improve alone by itself, brings about a comfort, brings about a confidence, just brings about hope. And without hope, it curses the darkness. It is nothing. So that within itself, where it starts in the mental, is able to possibly start the healing process, if any.
Yeah.
I would agree that hope is really essential to, it is an essential feature of advocacy is that we give people hope. And in doing so, it provides hope for ourselves. We are encouraged by the work that we do. Um, so anyone else on the panel like to answer the question?
I would say it helps you take the focus. I'm piggybacking off everyone else, but it helps you take the focus off um, ourselves, so we're not simmering in the pain and just ruminating and cycling through. Because as you stated, like empowering others helps you feel empowered. And that's pretty much it. It pretty much gets you out of that pain trap or that cycle. So now that you're not focusing on yourself, um, I can speak from experience. It does make you feel like now I can fight. It does, as you said, give you hope. It also gives you a sense of community to know you're not alone in going through whatever is going. And sadly, what I found is what I thought was the worst. Once you hear others and help others, you find out your problems are probably not as bad as other people. So that's also something that helps to disrupt that cycle.
Yeah, I also believe in the hope as well, because being an advocate, you don't always have hope, right? We're all humans, and we all go through these different emotions, and we can go into hope and go out of hope. And when we help other people, we see that we can help be that hope. It gives us hope in our lives as well as giving hope to the person that we're giving it to. But advocacy, it gives a person confidence, right? Because there's a foundation, there's someone else to share this thing with you. You're not alone. And we often feel lonely when we're in these situations. We feel like, oh, I'm the only person dealing with this thing, until we actually see people who actually have been through the same thing that we have been through, and that can sympathize with us and that can advocate for us, so.
Yeah. Thank you all. So we're going to jump into our next question. Historically, what sort of advocacy has been done in your field for the Black community? Rachel.
Okay. So it's so funny that I am wearing a shirt called A Fierce Kind of Love, because it was about a play that had to do with 70s and the revolution and disabilities. So coming from that, you had a lot of people looking at disabilities, but looking at the human side.
Mhm.
And in that revolution, you had a lot of Black and brown community members, people stand up to uh, reform people um, for disabilities and looking at them in terms of being humanistic and not a color, but as a right.
Thank you. I want to ask Terressa the same exact question. Historically, what sort of advocacy has been done in your field for the Black community?
So I would say two things. We know the Brown versus education in terms of the desegregation laws. However, as I stated, I've worked with juvenile justice, so making the transition from punishment to restorative justice and more of a center in terms of reform, dealing with students' trauma or trauma-informed care are some things that have been advocated for in the juvenile justice and in the educational field as well as advocating for social emotional learning, which I'm very, very happy we're beginning to see children especially Black and brown children who have some issues or behavioral problems or issues or challenges, that we're dealing with them from a social emotional standpoint and understand that they need help and therapy, not punishment. So those are the things that have been advocated for in my field of both education and juvenile justice.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Jerry the same question. Historically, what sort of advocacy has been done in your field for the Black community?
Honestly, I can't say that I know about a lot of activities that have been done for the Black community in education. However, in art, there's a whole host of different artists who have been out in the forefront making statements, sacrificing their success to be truthful and bring the message. I guess, yeah, that will be it.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ralph, same question.
Not enough. Not enough historically. I'm in the field of psychology, and what I don't see is enough of mental health support in the communities. In fact, I see just the reverse. I remember there's a time where there were several institutions that housed people who needed mental attention, and for some reason they closed them down and opened the doors, and these very same people that needed attention is on the streets now, and we people, citizens such as ourselves, are having to cope with them. And you hear the comments almost every day, and particularly in my neighborhood, she's crazy, or he's crazy, or you see something crazy that they're doing. And it's not just drugs. A lot of people like to contribute it all to drugs. But it's not just a drug problem. It's a mental ill problem. When you see people taking off their clothes, you know, a lot of people assume it's drugs. But no, it's not enough doing in the field in which I trained in, or been doing enough. It's not enough in the Black community. And, you know, I say that not with great pride, but with great disappointment.
Appreciate your comment. Jerry, what is the intersection of advocacy and racism?
Intersection between advocacy and racism. It's a little difficult for me to answer. Could you ask me last?
Okay. Terressa.
I thought about this question long and hard, and I was trying to find like the shortest answer possible, but I know I'm going to get some eyeballs from our producer. But basically, for me, it's embedded in the fabric of America. It's everything that we as Black and brown people have to deal with. It's embedded in every aspect of our lives. So once we stepped off the plantation, they were already had a system waiting for us that would make sure that the oppression continued. And so, you know, from slavery, there was a Jim Crow. I want to focus on, you know, something as simple as a celebration. When we think of celebrations, we think about the 4th of July and Independence Day, but people forget that Black people were still enslaved during the 4th of July. So I found out about Juneteenth and was like, what the heck is Juneteenth? And so that's when we, as Black folk, were able to celebrate. Because even after the Emancipation Proclamation, we still weren't free because they didn't tell all of us. So something as simple as a celebration in American history is something where we have to understand what white America or the powerful and privileged get to celebrate. We don't, because that's not tied in our history. And so when we think of advocating for ourselves, we have to think about the fact that historically, we've had to fight for everything, from our basic freedoms as physical freedom to walk and go places, and eat and drink and have safety, to getting fair wages, to get proper health care. So in terms of racism and advocacy, it's all connected. They're all together, intermingled. And until we all can recognize that, especially not Black and brown folk, we already understand that. Until the more powerful and privileged people understand that, yes, Racism is connected to every aspect, and that's why we almost have to fight for everything we get. Um, it's always going to be connected.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sorry for the long.
Mr. Ralph, what is the intersection of advocacy and racism?
First of all, I'd like to say I think Jerry's the most smartest person on the panel up here. When there are barriers erected, such as discrimination and prejudice, those two there, when they intersect right there, because we know that there are forces out there that's in play as we speak today, that's going to try to, in some form or fashion, slow you down. Some people think that we're making too many gains. So there are forces out there who take their prejudice plus their power intermingle them, and it becomes racism. That's, for me, that's how it's defined. It's prejudice and having the ability, the power to move out on them, to make things happen, and then it becomes racism. So racism is alive and it's thriving, and it slows down the work that's necessary to be done in the matter and the timely fashion in which we need it done. We need it done yesterday. And here we are today, still struggling, fighting, scratching, hollering, and dying about things that should have been rightly given to us as human beings many, many years ago. As Malcolm X once said, he said, it's not a fight for civil rights, it's a fight for human rights. See, if it was all about human rights, we wouldn't be talking about civil rights.
Right.
But because it's not about human rights, and certain forces don't recognize us as human beings or complete human beings, we have to fight the way we fight. And of course, there is an intersection where advocacy meets racism.
Thank you, Mr. Ralph. Thank you. I want to ask Ms. Rachel the same question. What is the intersection of advocacy and racism?
I just wanted to bounce off what everyone else said and look at it in terms of multiple struggles, look at it in terms of a socioeconomic thing, look at it in terms of political and influence. And so when you have all these different layers and you are unable to get everybody's story as to where they're at, like my experience as a Black woman looks different as even a Black woman who may be LGBTQ, I hope I'm saying it right, all the letters right, according to a white woman who may have in a rural area that's different. But when you're not including all those stories and you're not making everyone inclusive, that's where we go wrong. So when we talk about this whole racism piece and it being missing, everyone falls short. Everyone loses out. Everyone just loses that opportunity to have a well-roundedness human experience in our human walk.
Thank you, Ms. Rachel. I want to ask Jerry the same question. What is the intersection of advocacy and racism?
All right, that's a heavy question now. Thank you for your patience. So America was founded on this thing, you know, this racism, this thing where you think that you're better, you elevate yourself, because the people who started America, they were kind of the people who were the underdogs. So those people should have already knew, you know, about this thing that they were starting, but they wanted to glorify themselves. They wanted to elevate themselves. And here we are with this thing called racism. You know, we're sitting on this history that has a whole bunch of free labor, you know, and the thing is, we were created all to be equal, You know, everybody bleeds the same color blood. We're all equal, you know, and by there being so many of us and being human and being incredibly powerful, being able to do and affect change, you know, we highlight certain things and we highlight certain people. And when we do that, we just focus on what we think everybody else is going with. So we go along with a group and people get left behind. And the group that's not left behind, they get to glorify and elevate themselves even more. So there's these things, like you said, you're missing out on it. Like, this is America. We have a whole bunch of different people. So what makes America great is the people. It's the people and how they treat one another and the unity. So yeah, we need to be, America prides itself on being an advocate, being all over the world in people's business and stuff. But we fail to focus on our backyard. We fail to focus on the atrocities that America was founded on. We ignore that and continue to move on as if we are innocent. And advocacy is something that is necessary to combat racism. I'm just gonna leave right there.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna ask Dr. Clara to chime in, please.
So I'm going to answer that question about how has my profession, was that the question, historically advocated for Black people? Was that the question?
So historically,
Hello?
what sort of advocacy has been done in your field for the Black community?
Well, I can honestly say nothing. It's only until historically it wasn't even, Black people weren't even recognized as having, the issue of racism and how that impacts on everything historically, including trauma, stress, and all the different things that come out of trauma. That was not even on the radar as far as psychology was concerned. I think one of the beauties of trauma coming on in focus is that then it allowed Black and brown people and other people who have experienced trauma because of the larger system to begin to have a voice and to be able to tell their stories in a way that people could hear it as trauma because of how they've lived and how they've been disenfranchised and so on. I think as far as advocating for ourselves, what's happened since I think probably the 90s, more and more Black people have come into the position, and brown and other groups have come into the fields, particularly in mental health and health in general, because, more have come in or have been allowed to filter out into other spaces because people were advocating for themselves, saying that I want to see someone who looks like me. I need to talk to someone who looks like me because this issue of not being able to relate to that experience that Black people have had because of racism has interfered with the therapy, has interfered with the healing. So, that intersection between, advocacy and racism is something that has been embedded in psychology and psychiatry in a way that we're very much aware of. And more of us are trying to, acknowledge that it's there, and to even the institutions, like when someone asks to see someone of color, they will bring more or less more. If they say that sometimes they can't find them, which is ridiculous. We know that we're around, we're graduating from institutions and we're there, but they have to look and to bring people on panels that look like that represent the entirety of their people and their insurance and their institutions and whatnot. So I just wanted to kind of share that, you know. Oh, and one last thing, LADO was found out of that. It was born out of that understanding that we needed a predominantly Black institution that trained Black and brown clinicians to do the work in the community, particularly in trauma. So it was inspired by that understanding that we needed to take hold of it ourselves and begin to do the work that we needed to do in order to serve our communities.
Thank you, Dr. Claire. You learn something new every single day. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us that history.
Is there anything that the panel would like to share or to respond to in what I just said? You know, good, better, and different.
Thank you for acknowledging that and doing this work because as an educator, we didn't have the language when I was teaching fresh out of college, many 20 some years ago. We didn't know anything about ACEs and trauma informed care. There wasn't any language to it. We just knew a child was suffering. Or when I was in high school and we didn't know. I even in high school, I graduated. Oh Jesus, in the '90s, but we didn't know anything about bias. When I'm telling a teacher that I'm being harassed and by a teacher or another student who is white, we didn't know anything about racial battle fatigue or microaggressions. We didn't have any of that. We were just told to kind of get over it and this is just how it is. And so that sense of humanity and care for Black and brown youth, and I hate to sound sexist, and especially Black girls, was just a sigh of relief. And I thank God that we now have those resources. I wish we had more now, but I'm glad at least we have a name for it. We have a language we can say. We can say this child is suffering from trauma. No, she's just not a bad kid. No, she's not an angry little Black girl. No, she's not being aggressive. You were rude. You have been insensitive to her. And I know you may feel, speaking to Black and brown children can be aggressive or what have you, but we're not a monolith. And not every child is used to being talked to in that manner or in a stereotypical way. So the same way you speak to kids in the suburbs, you need to speak to Black and brown children in our community. And so even from the training of teachers, as a coach, I have gotten in trouble for telling non-Black and brown teachers, I don't know what you were taught, but you don't get in Black kids' faces and yell and scream and expect for them to sit there calmly. You're being aggressive to them. So the aggression that you're getting is the energy in the same manner in which you're approaching them. You're an adult. So I'm just very, very happy we now have the language and the resources. I wish there were more, but I appreciate organizations like this and the training that you do for in your profession as well as with educators on how to treat our Black and brown children with kindness and humanity.
Absolutely, because you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Richard.
I too share that same sentiment. We could sit here and talk all day long about medication and how the trust of the community and how they feel about doctors. And so with LADO and what you're explaining to us and teaching us just unravels what I could see happening in the community in terms of getting that trust back of trusting doctors, knowing that there is someone that you can totally, just from every standpoint that you can think of, express yourself to in a way and them understand you and have a cultural competence that you spend all day trying to explain in other circles and arenas, whereas that professional you can go to and can properly heal you, properly treat you. You can share with other parents that don't have to be afraid that that provider, that doctor is going to totally be there for them. So I just want to say thank you. I just want to say I'm excited to see, as this grows, and that I'm looking in some way to play my part in being able to share the word, to share this good news, and to see where it goes in the future.
Thank you, Jerry.
I guess I wanted to say, when you approach a situation like being a teacher and you have different youth that you work with, different races and stuff, it's a good situation to be in to learn how to be flexible and open, and to stay in the humble place. You stay in a humble place because you're always learning about human beings and how complex we are, and you never elevate yourself to a place where you know it all, and you yield to the sciences, like the doctor. You yield to the sciences and the research and the knowledge and the history that goes into understanding these complex things and being able to learn how to properly address things and how to properly consider the human being and their complex set of emotions and individuality as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ralph.
The comment I want to make is this, and it's a reference to a great deal of what everyone said, and particularly what the doctor said about the institutions that are established, that had to be established in order for us to receive what we receive today from ourselves. And that comment is the only people who can compose the agenda for people of color is people of color. You understand me?
I hear you loud and clear, sir.
The only people that can compose the agenda for people of color is people of color. And I say that even in reference to a board, a community development corporation I sit on, where the president, he's white. The vice president is white. The secretary is white. The entire executive board, with the exception of myself, is white. And I've told them, and put them on notice, how is it possible to be in a black community, a brown community, and you compose the agenda for those people? I said, can you imagine me sitting in the Asian community as the president on one of their CDCs, or sitting in an Italian neighborhood, or an Irish neighborhood, and even a Spanish neighborhood, and telling them I'm the chief executive officer or I'm the president of an organization and you don't look like me? And I posed this question to some young children. They were young men and women from Pennsylvania University came through, and 4 of them was Asian. And I asked them, is it possible that I can come into your neighborhood and become the president on one of the CDCs? And he said, no. And I said, why do you think that's not possible for me to do that? He said, well, we're going to have some culture differences, first of all. And there's some other barriers that you're going to have to deal with. So, and I say this, and I want to note this, is that I've been working alongside of white folks for the better of 30 years. And most of the white folks that I work with are clear today. And they understood and they understand that racism is like alcoholism. It's a disease. So most of them are recovering addicts. And I know there is a great deal of sincere, honest, hardworking folks who want to help us. And they say, what do you want? What do you want from us? I say, access.
Access.
You want to join us? Access.
Same opportunity.
but don't try to compose the agenda for people who don't look like you.
Thank you, Mr. Ralph. Dr. Claire, you want to chime in?
I think the panel has said it all. I really thank you, panel. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thing. I want to thank you, Rachel, for bringing up cultural competency because I think that's what we're talking about here, which is essential. I'm really big on language. I'm a writer. And so, we didn't know about cultural competency, but Mr. Ralph, is that who had just spoken? Mr. Ralph, you hit the nail on the head. We cannot go into any black people cannot go into any other culture. I cannot go to the Irish Association. I cannot go to any other association and be the executive director of their um, cultural organization, financial institutions. We cannot do that. We are the only race or group that will allow another race or group to be the executive directors. And I just wrote a piece on how poverty is profitable for everyone except the people who are impoverished. And we have to pay attention to that. And, I agree with you that there are many people who probably care about our community. However, the fact that you can sit on boards and there are no people from our community that look like us sitting on that board should be problematic for everyone there who's a white person. So, I love the fact, Mr. Ralph, thank you for saying that that's an addiction. I would also say that it's also very kind of selfish because if you are no longer the executive, you don't make six figures off the poverty and the pain of black and brown people anymore. Nonprofits make a lot of money off of poor people. And the other aspect of it is they're perpetuating the same injustices with the wage gaps. Most of the direct service providers in nonprofits are poor black people, poor brown people. But the executive director makes six figures. They make good money and they have benefits and they have all kinds of things to support and perpetuate the wealth of their family and well-being. We don't. And for me right now, race and advocacy is about having conversations about advocacy and racism without talking about economic justice is just we need to stop because there's no way that I can do anything for my family if I can't feed them, if I can't keep my lights on or have the basic needs. So until we can kind of get to a place where black and brown people are making for the same position as white folk, I don't want to hear about we're doing good in your hood
That's
until
right.
I make the same amount as you do.
That's right.
Ooh,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Well, what I heard was poverty pimp.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I had to say that one.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah. So, question: what point does the fight or flight instinct kick in when it comes down to advocacy? What drives you to fight, and what drives you to flee the fight? Mr. Ralph.
Oh, okay. Fight or flight. Now, we're talking about individualism. We can't just group everybody in, and because people respond differently, including myself. A lot of people might ask me, and other people like me, how do you keep doing it? Why you keep doing it? They're not paying you, spending long hours. Some of them don't care about you. Some of them cussing you out. You're never going to satisfy everybody. Me personally, I thought about it a lot. And it's my personal belief that it's almost innate. It's something that I have to do, something that I need to do. I know how to distinguish between what I want and I need. And this is something that I need to do. The same way I need the air in my lungs to sustain my life or the blood in my veins to keep me moving, I have to do this. So there's no fight a flight for me. I'm in it to win it to the end.
You stand your ground, huh?
Absolutely.
All right.
And of course, there are people have to bail out. Might become too much for them psychologically, emotionally, mentally, financially. And to them, I say, take a back seat, sit down, take a break, because we can't do nothing with you if you're dead or if you're stressed out. Go take a rest. So there's those people who need a rest, and then there's some people who dig deep down in their reserves and they keep it moving, such as myself.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for standing your ground, brother. Miss Rachel, the same question. At what point does the fight or flight instinct kick in when it comes down to advocacy? What drives you to fight? What drives you to flee the flight? Fight. Sorry about that.
Honestly, flight is not in my vocabulary. From the day I got my son's diagnosis, that just obliterated itself. And it led into other places of advocacy. And as Mr. Ralph was saying, I might take a rest. I might, you know what I mean, sit down for a second and dig deep and mull and reflect. But the fight never stops. And in that fight, I'm taking others. I'm taking other parents that can continue the fight. I'm empowering others that can continue. I'm provoking in a good way. I'm poking. I'm serving to change the color. So flight, excuse me, is not an option. The fight will always continue. That's committed to me to the last breath I have of my life.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask Jerry the same question. At what point does fight or flight instincts kick in when it comes down to advocacy? What drives you to fight and what drives you to flee the fight?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out the definition of flight. If you're talking about like retreat, you know, and regroup later on to come back, you know, I don't know. Just like the our other partners here, I don't know what flight is. I mean, flight for what? What are you flighting for? It's like you wasting your time. You might as well never start in the first place. So I'm when I come into the fight, I come in to expect to go all the way to the end. I mean, you know, it's a personal thing. You know what I'm saying? So there's no flight at all.
Great. Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask you the same question. You look like you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
She ready. So for me, I have a different perspective. So I come from the little sticks of the Eastern Shore, and I got to Philly, went to a nice little cushy college. Shout out to University of Pennsylvania. And I got a little comfortable. And I can't lie, fighting got me out of my little comfortable job and advocating for other people. And me going to my Whole Foods and my Trader Joe's. And so it started jeopardizing my lifestyle. And so I had to regroup with the fight. It did cost me my job, I have to be honest, all jokes aside. But it taught me how to fight differently. And as Miss Rachel said, now I make sure that I have some backup, like Mr. Ralph or somebody. So I have people in high and low places. I can call somebody from the neighborhood, and I can call somebody in the senator's office to get what I need done. But I have to be honest and say it depends on who I'm fighting for and what I'm fighting for. Because if I'm fighting for my child, there is no such thing as retreat or, flight. But if it is something that can be addressed with a nicely worded letter, or if it's something that isn't time sensitive or an emergency, I now know how to, as you all said, retreat, take a break, regroup, and actually strategize about how I'm going to approach this. So not only am I winning the battle, I'm winning the war, not just for me, but someone else. So that's where I'm at in terms of the fight or flight. But I used to be, I was with you, Mr. Ralph. I was with you. And then they took away my nice job. And mama had to calm down because I was like, I went from Whole Foods to Save a Lot. Mama likes her organic meats. And so I was like, okay, let's regroup. And now that's where I'm at right now. I believe in community and coalition building. So it's a group approach, a community approach, a strategic approach.
Yes.
And that way, the problem isn't addressed just right now. They just smile politely, but no, policies are changed. So that's where I'm at. I'm on for long-term change and not just small incremental victories, but really big, because they've given us scraps and, okay, we'll let you go come in now. No, you're letting all of us come in. We're getting it in writing. So now I can spread the word and go, we all coming in if I can come in. So I just wanted to, yeah. So yeah, I fight, but I fight behind Mr. Ralph now.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. If we all come in, we all come in.
If we all come in.
If we-
So yeah,
I'll set it up. You fight.
Set
You
it
do
up.
the writing.
I come
Social
squad.
media, you do
Got
the art.
squad.
I'm gonna ask Dr. Claire to chime in on this conversation, please.
I was thinking about fight, flight, and comfortable. And as I thought about the trajectory over the course of my career, I don't think I've ever. So earlier on, all I knew was fight. That was sort of like, you just, if you want to get something done, you have to lean into it. You can't back off it, no matter what it does to you. But I must honestly say that I never fought alone. There was always someone there who was watching my back. And maybe that because I was younger and didn't realize that, it seemed like I was doing it all by myself. But when I think back over the conversations and the advocates that I had in my life, who were just kind of like quietly making, room for her to do what she felt she needed to do. I fought, and someone asked me some years ago, it's like something, I forget what they asked, but I said, I've always rebelled. It's just in my nature to rebel. And so, but I've never fought alone. Now that I think about it, I've never, from day one, I've never, ever fought alone. And so going into private practice, I thought, okay, I've done my time in hospital, like being an advocate and working with some of the most, severe situations possible. Go into private practice and just kind of go from there. And then I started to get, so I was comfortable, but then I became uncomfortable. So there's something about, I could never quite get comfortable. So I had to create an organization in order to get even more partners in this fight and to support and give the same environment or structure that was given to me when I was fighting in my earlier years. So that's the thought that came to me. And so, and my question to the panel, as I just shared, kind of broadly my story, is, I had it here. Can you think of a specific incident or time in your life when someone advocated for you, in order to make things work for you? I know one of our panelists have already, I believe that was Terressa, has already talked about that. But I just wanted to throw that question out to the panel.
You want to go, Rachel?
Absolutely. I had a time in which my son needed specific services to go to a very expensive alternative school, and I would have to ultimately hire an expensive attorney to do so. However, I had a seasoned parent who told me exactly what to do, exactly how to play that game. And so it became this huge success. But a few days after, I wasn't complacent because I said to myself, well, we got successful, but something's missing. And what was missing is the need to share what I learned, the whole process, the confidence, the success of it all, and taking that and bringing another parent at some point and at some time and at some experience through a success or being able to help that parent maybe not get in that same situation, be successful, but empower them to kind of like do the same, to kind of like fight and to help that other parent and so on and so on. So it just became this massive lesson that I learned in a very holistic way, in a very way that was empowering to me. That for me, this was the first experience that really embodied the fire in my belly to want to keep on propelling me to not only do this, but in other things such as literacy and seeing people in a better stance and learning that literacy is a right and not a privilege. So it took me in other areas. So I think that was the point in which I just saw it beyond as just being a win and a success, but I saw it in terms of how I'm able to provide that, hopefully that same experience and do it within the community.
Thank you, Rachel. Brother Ralph.
Yeah, quick story. I think I was about 15 or 16 years old, and I was in the neighborhood, and I'm talking to some neighbors. It's a nice sunny day, just about everybody sitting outside. And before I said, okay, I'm going to corner and get some of the girls some ice cream. And before I get to the end of the block, a whole bunch of police came up the block, threw me up against the wall, handcuffed me, and I could say, man, what I do? It didn't make no difference back then what you did. This is the 60s. And they would put me in we used to call it the meat wagon back then. Big old red box truck, looked like a U-Haul truck painted red. And they put me in there, and I hear a lot of people outside the truck, and I'm trying to look out the window and everything. And so they take off. We're going down the street. I said, man, I'm going to the police station. I don't even know what I'm going for. So before we get off the block, I hear all this banging, and the truck rocking back and forth. I said, man, what's going on here? Like I was in an earthquake. Come to find out, the people in the neighborhood had rallied behind my innocence. They were saying he was with us. Rallied behind my innocence, and they literally was laying in the streets and behind the truck and before the truck. They said, you're not taking him nowhere. He didn't do anything. Well, during this commotion, about 10, 15 minutes later, some other police officers came to the block and they said, oh, we got the perpetrator around the corner.
Wow.
So that's what I can think of every time I think about some people becoming an advocate of mine and coming to my aid.
Appreciate that. Jerry.
So when I was in high school, started doing track and field in late in my years, maybe like sophomore year, and started filling out college applications and stuff. And I remember my guidance counselor told me not to worry about those applications because I should be a janitor or something like that. And I remember, that hurt me a lot. And I remember this woman became a teacher there at my school. And I became friends with her. Her name is Cheryl Stanley. And that Irish woman, she spoke into me. And she built me up as a young man when I didn't have anybody to speak into me. She was a white woman, Irish. And she also advocated for me to St. Joseph, the university that I graduated from. She would drive all the way up from Virginia every weekend and go to the president's office, to his house, and just advocate on my behalf and speak and just say these glorious things about me and to me, and just build me up in a way that, it took me a long time to actually believe in the things that she was saying, but she actually became my second mom. And I call her mom to this day, and she loves me as if I was her son. I believe it now. And she even told me that she put me in her will. And she just her life, just loving me the way she did without any foundation, whatever she conjured up in her mind and her heart. It's just an incredible feeling to have someone care about you like that, and you didn't even do anything for it. So that's my story right there.
We appreciate that, Jerry. And I'm going to ask Dr. Clara for her final thought, please.
Well, I wasn't quite prepared for that. This has been going so well. It's this outpouring of like our stories, our collective stories, and our hearts and our feelings. And I just, I really do appreciate how we showed up today. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I just want to encourage you, no matter what you do, to just continue to do the work and to know that collectively, this is how we're getting it done. Each and every collectively, even though at times we may it may feel like you're alone. You're not. There's someone there. You just sit with it for a moment, and they'll come to you to be your advocate as well as while you're being advocates for other people. So that's my last thought. Thank you, panel. It sounds like we're getting ready to end. Is this our last moment, DeWayne? Uh-oh.
PC Radio Live, Life After Trauma organization. We embrace fatherhood, and Black voters matters. Thank you. And when we go into this pause, we will have a clip by one of our panelists, Mr. Jerry. So thank you. God bless.
I used to be with a lot of people in this building because this building is like a big space, and so we used to just pay, learn history or art a lot. It used to keep youth out of trouble too. A lot of people has different ways of how they want to build it. I just want the building open to keep the youth out of trouble. For it to be open by Mill Creek once again, so it can open up like for art center. It should be used just for Mill Creek because Mill Creek used it for a good purpose.
Yo, what's the deal, y'all? It's your boy QDZ. What up, everybody? I'm Fatine. And I'm Aja. And we're Kendrick the Family Soul. What up, world? It's your boy, Young Steph. Hey, yo, it's mobbing. You know what time it is. It's your boy, Tone Trump. What's going on, y'all? It's Chill Moody, West Philadelphia's own Mr. Nice Things himself. You already know you rocking with the #1 internet radio station. On PC Radio Live. PCRadioLive.com. Livest place in the world. PC Radio Live, man. If you ain't up on this, you ain't up on nothing, man. Check us out every day. 24 hours a day streaming. New music, new interviews, real niggas, beautiful women. What more can you ask for? If they ain't hating, you ain't winning. Let's win. PC Radio Live.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees.
Welcome back to Unpacked. This portion is our youth panelist session. So what I'm going to do, I ask our youth panelists, please tell us your name, what school you go to, and what grade you're in. I'm going to start right here.
My name's Anaya. I go to Hyde Addison, and I'm in 4th grade.
Welcome. Next.
My name is Uriel. I go to West Philly High, and I'm in 9th grade.
Welcome.
Hi, my name's Dan. I'm in 7th grade and I go to Slams.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Zion Puryear, and I go to Conestoga High School.
Welcome. So I have some questions for you all. The first question is, how do you advocate for yourself, and why do you need to advocate for others? Anyone? Zion, look like you want to go.
Personally, I advocate for others, just by standing up when I see something that's going wrong or see something that's going awry in any way. You can just ask for help, or sometimes, if you see misjustice or injustice happening currently, I just step in slightly.
Thank you.
I might as well say it now. I'm trying to advocate for family and how family members don't get to spend that much time. In this world we're living in, we don't have much time to spend with family members. So at some moments in life, I've been reading a couple articles and seeing about family bonding.
Thank you. Yes.
I advocate for myself. You have to love yourself before you love other people, in my opinion, because if you don't do self-love, then you can't stick up for yourself in some kind of emphasis.
Yes. Thank you.
I would also have to agree with Zion, but I do advocate for myself and for everyone else because it makes sense to make sure you take care of yourself and others.
Thank you. Thank you. I have another question. I'm going to start off with Dan. Who has taught you how to advocate for yourself?
When it comes to advocating, it comes as my dad first off, but there's way more people. As we are right now, we're advocating right now as we speak, when we speak to the world and we're speaking to other people. But otherwise, my teachers, my mom, my grandma, other people are advocating for us, and we speak to them with pride.
Thank you so much. Who taught you how to advocate for yourself?
Um, mostly my dad, but my mom and if, and I guess a few of my teachers.
Thank you. Zion, who has taught you how to advocate for yourself?
Personally, my parents have really well, I believe, advocated for me and helped me advocate for myself and taught me how and guided me throughout that. So yeah.
Who has taught you how to advocate for yourself?
Like everybody said, my parents and like my church friends and like my regular friends have helped me advocate for myself.
Thank you. Do any of y'all fellas have a question for the youth?
Yeah, I'm Ralph Whitfield, and I'm curious as to what the youth are reading today. I need each one of you to tell me what's your favorite book and why.
So, call me out if this is a little childish for me, but I mostly like comedies and fantasies in my opinion, and my favorite book was always The Amulet. The Amulet was a story about a girl who found an amulet and got powers. It's funny, but it's mostly a fantasy type of book, and I'm mostly into those books because they just have a big interest and they always get me to think and fantasize.
My favorite book has to be Night. It's about like all the struggles of going through like the Holocaust and stuff.
Linda?
My probably my favorite book would be. Well, I like to read a lot of comics, so I guess my favorite book would be Cleopatra in Space, but I haven't read all of them yet.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. So,
Who wants to answer?
Go ahead. Go ahead,
oh,
Zion.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Personally, my favorite books are, I would say, the Harry Potter series and, To Kill a Mockingbird and Lord of the Flies.
Go ahead, Brother Jerry.
All right. So, with all that you know about what's going on in the world, what do you think is important for the future of America?
Go ahead, Zion.
I would say what's important for the future of America and what's important to remember currently with all that's going on is that we've been through a lot. In America, we've been through a lot, and it can only go up from here because in America, we're basically at rock bottom. But I feel like in the future, we just have to remember what we've been through, look back at the past, would be currently, and, realize what we've been through and see how we can just prevail from there.
Thank you.
Well, like she said, we've been through thick and thin, and throughout COVID-19, we've shown what America's true colors with these Donald Trump raids and all the black racism going on. America's true colors are not too good as everyone thought they were.
I guess I would have to say everything that's going on in the world is starting to change people's minds and people's hearts. And some people are starting to have different feelings about different things.
Thank you.
I would say that America, we rise and then we fall down again. But I feel like right now we're rising up again because now that we changed our presidency and like the election is like good and stuff like that,
like we're rising again. So yeah.
Thank you. I have another question. How do you advocate for others, such as your peers or even your community? Anybody?
It's kind of hard to explain. So when I advocate for others, I most likely it's supporting others in what they're doing, it whether it be odd or just normal, or maybe they might want to get some good success in their dreams. It's obvious that to do something like that, you might want to support them through what they're doing.
Thank you. Anybody else? The question is, how do you advocate for others, such as your peers or even your community?
Um, I would say if something isn't right, you just have to stick up for yourself and others because not everyone might have the courage to do a lot of things, and you need to make sure that they do. So you encourage them, but you also need to help them because they might not know how to stick up for each other.
Thank you. You want to go?
Sure. I would say, like she said, stick up for each other and like we're youth, so we have like a lot of cyberbullying and like regular bullying going on. So if you like people say if you see something, do something. Even though it's not your place to do something, still do something. Like if somebody's getting hurt, say something and do something.
Good point. Zion?
Going off what Anaya said, I just feel like advocating for other people is like very important. And when you see something, like she said, say something, do something, act on it. If you see something wrong, just act.
Brother Ralph, you have a question for the youth?
Yeah, I have a question. I'd like to know. I'm going to make a statement first, and then I'll ask you the question. If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. So, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years with a plan of action?
Anybody? Oh, shoot. Go ahead.
I hope when if I see myself doing something in 10 years, it'll probably be helping other people. Um, the people that are homeless, people that um that things that need to be changed, doing a lot of things for the community.
Thank you. You can go ahead.
Besides my basketball career, I would see myself open up group homes for like more teens to go to if they need like support. And I'll see myself like what my mom's doing now, like food cupboard, like bringing more food to like the homeless and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah.
I can see myself probably helping the community, doing what my dad does for a living, which is the food cupboard and doing stuff like the unpack a lot, especially because we're getting paid to this. But anyways, jokes aside, it's really nice to see some people like my dad helping out the community and planning for a better world for youth and old.
Zion?
I see myself in 10 years after college, going across the world, hopefully in places of poverty and stuff and low income in third world countries, and hopefully, teaching English, getting them textbooks, and yeah, just helping them out over there.
Thank you. Brother Jerry, you have a question for the youth?
Yes, I'm inspired by how you guys are hopeful in the future, but you're realistic. Um, I'd like to know what you think about forgiveness and understanding.
Well, it always goes. At least everyone gets a second chance in life, and try to improve. So if they do something bad, they can always make up for it in the future. whether it be days of hard work trying to get your work done because you did not finish it on time, or just going, or just helping yourself in your career the same way.
Thank you.
I feel as if regarding forgiveness and understanding, like he said, there's second chances. There also can be third chances, but with understanding, there's also a limit in which you need to cut it off. Like at a certain point, if they're not getting it and it's not clicking to them, then you might have to slightly put the forgiveness and the understanding aside in some cases.
Yep.
Um, I also I also agree with them. Yes, always need a second chance. If someone did something is worth forgiving, you should always forgive them. Because not everything is worth forgetting, but you should always give people chances because it might be worth forgiving other people.
Thank you.
I would say, like, you can forgive, but you can't forget what the person has done. You can forgive, like, your parents can forgive you for like disobeying them, but they can't forget. So they can't really trust you. So if you forgive somebody, then you can't really trust them because you might think they're gonna do it again.
Thank you. I have a question. Uh, what is the most important for you to fight for right now? What is the most important thing for you to fight for right now? Anybody?
All right, the most common one would be justice, peace, and equality for all. But in some cases, it might just be fighting for way different things. It could be fighting for that promotion you wanted. It could be even fighting to get in that soccer team you wanted to get in. That's just two examples. But there are many examples of people fighting for what they want, and racism is one of them.
Anybody else?
Also, with a lot of others.
I feel as if right now with what's going on in the world, we just need to it's the little things. Like I really feel like we just need to fight for the little things. Like he said, if you really want that promotion, the soccer team, just fight for the little things. If you see something going on, if somebody's in help on the street, I feel like you should just help them, advocate for them.
Ready?
Yes, something I think that's going on right now is everything. We're all trying to fight a virus. We're all looking for equality and justice. And there are more things that are probably happening. And these are things in the world that we need to take care of. And everyone really needs this most importantly.
Okay.
Right now, what like everybody said, we need to fight for equality and justice and stuff like that. But I feel like more like women's rights and let me see, that's what like science people said about like what we use in like the atmosphere, the climate change and stuff like that. That's what we need to fight for too.
Thank you. I have one more question for you all. What does community mean to you? Anybody?
When I hear the word community, I mean I see or hear a group of people. And that may just be a group of people. And but most of all it could be a group of people trying to make something in the world and try to fix something.
Thank you.
I feel like a community is, like he said, a group of people, but a group of people that have something in common, something that connects them, ties them all together, and, makes them one whole.
Thank you.
A community means to me like people that you can go through go to talk about stuff and have fun, but then again talk about stuff serious. Like right now we're a community. Like right now we're talking about stuff serious, but we're still having fun doing that.
What community means to me is everyone lending a hand, helping each other, doing something for the world, like mostly everyone else said. And that would mean a lot of things, helping with a lot of problems in the world, like protests, dealing with the earth, and a lot more.
Actually, here's one thing I want to say.
Go ahead, sir.
You can't spell community without.
Unity.
And when we use unity as a group, we can make things happen.
Yes. And I would like to thank all of our youth panelists that participated in this third session of Unpack. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Lado, PCRadioLive.com, Mill Creek Community Partnership, and all the rest. So thank you so much. God bless y'all.